The morning sun in Laverna lazily filtered through the blinds into Rondo's bedroom, painting stripes of light beige across the walls. Jamal stretched, trying not to wake Layla, who was sleeping next to him. His dark chocolate skin contrasted with the snow-white sheets, a gift for their third wedding anniversary. The clock on the bedside table read 7:30. He had another quarter of an hour before his wife would wake up to the sound of the alarm. Jamal slipped silently out of bed and headed for the bathroom. Looking in the mirror, he studied his face closely. The 30-year-old man with piercing brown eyes and a short beard looked fit and healthy. No one would ever guess the diagnosis he had received about a year ago. He opened the cabinet and took out an orange pill bottle hidden behind his shaving supplies. He poured one pill into his palm, quickly swallowed it, and washed it down with water from the tap. "Jamal?" Layla's sleepy voice came from the bedroom. "I'm in the bathroom, baby," he replied, hurriedly putting the medicine away. "I'm going to take a shower." "Okay," she muttered, rolling over onto her other side. "Don't forget, we have dinner tonight." Jamal froze for a second, remembering. Right, Abigail was supposed to come over tonight. A strange feeling of unease stirred inside him. The last few meetings with his wife's friend had been tense, as if the air between them was electrified. He shook his head to dispel the unpleasant thoughts and stepped into the shower. Lila Rondo woke up to the sound of the alarm clock and didn't immediately realize that her husband wasn't there. The sound of water from the bathroom told her where he was. She sat up in bed, rubbing her eyes. The 28-year-old woman with smooth, cinnamon-colored skin and shoulder-length curly hair was attractive even right after waking up. Her colleagues at the clinic often said that her smile calmed patients better than any medicine. She got up and headed for the kitchen. Their 2-story house in a quiet neighborhood of Laverna was not luxurious, but cozy and tidy. Layla was proud that she and Jamal had achieved everything on their own. His auto repair shop provided a steady income, and her job as a nurse allowed them to live comfortably and even save a little for the future. She was now attending medical college in the evenings, dreaming of becoming a doctor. While making coffee, Layla checked the list of things she needed to buy for dinner. Abigail had promised to bring dessert. Her signature cupcakes were always the highlight of their get-togethers. A strange expression flashed across Layla's face as she thought of her friend. Something had changed between them lately, but she couldn't quite put her finger on it. By 8:30, Jamal was fully dressed in his work overalls with the Rondo Auto Repair logo. He was drinking coffee and scrolling through the news on his tablet when Lila placed a plate of toast and scrambled eggs in front of him. "Busy day today?" she asked, sitting down across from him with her own cup. "2 suspension repairs and a full service for Felicia Johnson's BMW, he replied, without taking his eyes off the screen. "I think I'll be here until about 6. I'll be home in time for dinner." "Okay," Layla nodded. "I'm at the clinic until 3, then straight to class. I'll be home around 5, just in time to cook dinner." Jamal looked up from his tablet and glanced at his wife. "How's Abigail? She's been acting strange lately." Lila shrugged, trying too hard to appear carefree. "Nothing special. Just a lot of work at the salon, I guess." He nodded, pretending to believe her, although his intuition told him that it was not just work. Perhaps Abigail was beginning to suspect something. They had been extremely careful, but Laverne was a small town where rumors spread faster than wildfire. After breakfast, Jamal kissed his wife and walked out to the driveway where his pickup truck was parked. His neighbor across the street, Nakia Freeman, was just leaving her house with a briefcase and a stack of notebooks under her arm. "Good morning, Jamal," she waved with her free hand. "Good morning, Nakia. Busy week ahead?" "Yeah," she sighed. "Test day for the 8th graders today. Did you happen to see Abigail come by last week? I wanted to ask if she could cut my son's hair on Saturday." Jamal felt his heart skip a beat. No, I didn't. Ask Layla," he said, quickly getting into his pickup truck and starting the engine. "Sorry, I'm late." Nakia watched him go, puzzled. Jamal cursed silently. He and Abigail had agreed to meet only when Layla was at class. He wasn't supposed to know about her friend's visit last week. At the same time, Abigail Mercer sat in Dr. Carter's waiting room, nervously fingering the strap of her purse. The 26-year-old woman with short curly hair and delicate features usually radiated confidence, but today her dark brown eyes betrayed her anxiety. "Miss Mercer!" A nurse appeared in the doorway. "The doctor is ready to see you." Abigail stood up, smoothing out imaginary wrinkles in her skirt. She had had routine tests done 2 weeks ago, and yesterday the clinic had called her and asked her to come in to get the results. This did not bode well. Dr. Carter, a gray-haired man with glasses, greeted her with a serious expression that only heightened her anxiety. "Have a seat, Miss Mercer," he said, pointing to a chair across from his desk. "I have some unpleasant news for you. Your HIV test came back positive." The world around Abigail suddenly lost its clarity. She heard the doctor's voice as if through cotton wool as he explained about additional tests, about treatment options, about how it wasn't a death sentence. But the only thing she could think about was Jamal. She hadn't had any other partners in the last 6 months. "Who else knows?" She interrupted the doctor's explanation. "No one, Miss Mercer. This is confidential information." "Thank you," she replied mechanically, taking the folder with the results and referrals for additional tests from his hands. When she left the clinic, Abigail couldn't start her car right away. Her hands were shaking too much. Fragments of phrases and memories swirled in her head. How could she have been so naive? How could she have believed that she could have something serious with Jamal when he was married to her best friend? Their affair had begun by chance at a party when Layla was on duty. One word led to another, one glass led to another, and before they knew it, they were in her apartment above the beauty salon. Then there were secret meetings, stolen moments of happiness, and a constant feeling of guilt toward Lila. Jamal said that his marriage to Lila was based solely on habit, that there had been no feelings between them for a long time, and she, like a fool, believed him. Abigail finally managed to stop shaking and turned on the ignition. She needed to talk to Jamal, and right away. Rondo's auto repair shop was located on the outskirts of Laverne in a small industrial area. Jamal was just finishing work on the suspension of a red Ford when he heard the screech of brakes in the parking lot. He looked up and saw Abigail's car parked at an angle and felt a chill run down his spine. She entered the shop, ignoring the greeting from Keith, the young mechanic working with Jamal. Her eyes, usually warm and lively, were now cold as ice. "We need to talk," she said in a tone that brooked no argument. "Alone." Jamal nodded, taking off his work gloves. "Kate, keep an eye on things. I'll be right back," he said, leading Abigail into his small office at the back of the workshop and closing the door. "What's wrong?" he asked, though he could already tell from her expression that this was not going to be an easy conversation. Abigail silently handed him the folder with the test results. Jamal opened it, and his face froze when he saw the line with the diagnosis. He began, but she interrupted him. "How long have you known?" Jamal lowered his eyes. There was no point in denying the obvious. "Almost a year," he replied quietly. Abigail felt a wave of anger rising inside her. "And you knew, and still, without protection." Each word came out with difficulty. "You knowingly put me at risk." "I'm on medication," he tried to justify himself. "My doctor said that with the right treatment, the risk of transmission is minimal." "Minimal?" she exclaimed. "Not zero, Jamal. You should have told me. You should have given me a choice." He was silent, unable to look her in the eye. Abigail suddenly realized something else. "Does Lila know?" Jamal looked up, and the answer was written on his face before he spoke. "Yes, she's known from the beginning." Abigail staggered as if she had been physically struck. Layla knew. Her best friend, whom she had been close to since college, knew that her husband was HIV positive and had said nothing when she noticed them getting closer. "Abigail, listen." Jamal took a step toward her, but she backed away. "Don't you dare touch me," she hissed. You both just..." She couldn't find the words to express the depth of her betrayal and pain. "We can talk about this," Jamal tried to convince her. "There are good treatments available now. I'll help you get in touch with the right doctors." "That's noble of you," Abigail said bitterly. "But you know what? I'll manage on my own, just like I always have." She turned to leave, but Jamal grabbed her arm. "Abigail, please, let's talk like adults. I'm to blame. I should have told you. Let go of me." Her voice was quiet, but it rang with steel. I'll come to dinner tonight, and we'll act normal for Lila's sake. Then I'll decide what to do next. And Jamal," she looked him straight in the eye, "I'm not going to let this go." He unclenched his fingers, and she walked out of the office without looking back. Kate watched her curiously, but said nothing when Jamal returned to work with an unusually grim expression on his face. That evening, Abigail stood in front of the mirror in her apartment above the beauty salon, putting the finishing touches on her makeup. She had learned to hide her emotions behind a professional smile early in her career, and today that skill would come in handy. On the kitchen table was a container of cupcakes, her famous chocolate assortment, which she always brought to Rondo's dinners. Today's recipe was special. It included rat poison, which she had bought that afternoon at a hardware store on the other side of town. After talking to Jamal, she drove straight to Lila's clinic. Her friend was surprised by her unexpected visit, but found time for a quick chat in the staff lounge. "What's wrong, Abby? You look upset," Lila asked with concern in her voice. "I just got my test results," Abigail replied, watching her friend's reaction closely. "I have HIV. Layla's face changed for a split second, not with fear or surprise, but with a fleeting expression of guilt, which she immediately tried to hide behind her professional nurse's mask. "Oh, Abigail, I'm so sorry," she began, but Abigail interrupted her. "You knew," she said, not as a question but as a statement. "You knew about Jamal, and you didn't warn me." Lila remained silent, confirming Abigail's suspicion with her silence. "How could you?" Abigail asked quietly. "I thought we were friends." "We are friends," Lila replied quickly, looking around nervously to make sure no one could hear them. "But you slept with my husband, Abigail. What was I supposed to do?" "Warn me," exclaimed Abigail, then lowered her voice. "You're a nurse, for God's sake. You know what kind of disease that is." "I also know that with the right treatment, it's livable," retorted Lila. "And I know that if I had told you, you would have stopped seeing him. And I hoped he would finally get what he deserved." Abigail stared at her friend, unable to believe her ears. "You used me to get back at him? And you put my health at risk?" "I'm sorry it turned out this way." Lila looked genuinely guilty. "But you're not an innocent victim either, Abigail. You knew he was married, to your best friend." They stared at each other across the chasm of betrayal that now separated them. At that moment, Abigail realized that she had lost not only her lover, but also her best friend, and the decision she had made in Jamal's office was now set in stone. "See you tonight," she said, getting up. "I'll bring dessert as usual." Now, looking at the container of poisoned cupcakes, Abigail felt a strange calm. She grabbed her bag, her car keys, and the dessert that was to be the last meal for Jamal and Layla Rondo. Dinner at the Rondo house took place in a strange atmosphere. On the surface, everything looked normal. Layla had made her signature lasagna, Jamal had opened a bottle of wine, and Abigail was telling funny stories from the salon. But beneath this deceptive normality, unspoken accusations and the bitterness of betrayal were simmering. "Who's ready for dessert?" Abigail asked when they had finished the main course. "I made your favorite chocolate cupcakes, Jamal." "Sounds wonderful," he replied, avoiding her gaze. Lila began to clear the table, but Abigail stopped her. "Let me," she said with a smile. "You've been on your feet all day." Left alone in the kitchen, Abigail took the cakes out of the container and carefully arranged them on dessert plates. 3 cakes for Jamal and Lila, with rat poison, 1 for herself, plain and safe. When she returned to the dining room with the plates, Jamal and Layla were sitting in tense silence. Abigail placed the dessert in front of them and sat down in her place. "To our friendship," she said, raising her glass of wine in a toast that sounded almost like mockery. Jamal and Layla hesitantly raised their glasses. "To friendship," they echoed. Abigail watched them eat her cakes, each bite bringing them closer to the inevitable end. She kept the conversation light, discussing the latest city news and plans for a future that Rondo would no longer have. "I have to go," she said when the dessert was finished. "The salon opens early tomorrow." "Of course," Lila said, standing up to see her out. "Thanks for coming, Abigail." They hugged at the door, and Abigail felt a pang of regret, They had once been close, but the past was gone. "Good night," she said, stepping out into the warm evening air of Laverne. The next morning, neighbor Nikia Freeman, on her way to work, noticed that Jamal's car was still parked in the driveway. It was unusual for him not to leave so early. Even stranger was that there were no sounds of life coming from the house. No television, no voices, no running water. Concerned, she approached the door and rang the bell. No one answered. She knocked and called out his name. Silence. With growing alarm, Nikia took out her phone and dialed 911. When the police broke down the door, they found Jamal and Layla Rondo dead in their bed. Empty water glasses stood on the bedside tables, and a container with the remains of chocolate cupcakes sat on the kitchen table. Detective Milka Shepard arrived at the scene 20 minutes after the patrol officer's call. Her tall figure in a strict dark blue suit attracted the attention of neighbors gathered behind the yellow police tape. The 42-year-old woman with short dreadlocks and attentive amber eyes was reserved, but her every movement exuded professionalism and confidence. "What do we have here?" she asked, putting on latex gloves and approaching the officer guarding the entrance to the Rondo home. "Two dead, ma'am. Jamal and Layla Rondo, husband and wife. They were found by their neighbor, Nikia Freeman." The officer nodded toward a dark-skinned woman sitting on the steps of a neighboring house, wrapped in a blanket despite the warm weather. She became concerned when no one answered the door or responded to her knocking, even though her husband's car was there. "We broke down the door and found the bodies in the bedroom." "Any signs of forced entry or struggle?" "None, ma'am. The door was locked from the inside and the windows were closed." "It looks like poisoning. There were glasses of water next to the bodies and the remains of some kind of dessert in the kitchen." Shepard nodded and entered the house. Inside, everything looked neat and ordinary. No signs of conflict or a hasty escape. She walked through the living room, noting the photos of the happy couple on the walls, and went up to the bedroom. Jamal and Layla were lying in bed as if asleep. Their faces were contorted in grimaces of pain, indicating a painful death. The medical examiner, Dr. Parker, was already examining the bodies. "Preliminary findings?" Shepard asked, trying to breathe through her mouth. The smell in the room was overwhelming. "Poisoning, it appears," Parker replied, without looking up from his work. "Time of death is between midnight and 2 in the morning. Signs of acute liver and kidney failure. We need to run toxicology, but I'd bet on rodenticide. Rat poison. Suicide? Unlikely." The expert shook his head. "Usually in a double suicide, one of the spouses dies first. Here they died almost simultaneously. Besides, this is a painful death, not the most popular choice for those who want to end their lives." Shepard nodded and looked over at the bedside tables. On one of them, next to a glass of water, was an orange pill bottle. She leaned over to read the label, and her eyebrows rose slightly. "Antiretroviral drugs," she muttered. "Interesting." After finishing her examination of the bedroom, the detective went down to the kitchen, where forensic technicians were collecting samples of food and drink. "What was that?" she asked, pointing to a container with crumbs of chocolate dessert. "Looks like cupcakes," replied one of the technicians. "We found wrappers on the table and in the trash can. Judging by the packaging, they were brought here. There are no ingredients for such pastries in the house." "Check everything for toxins," Shepard ordered, "especially the dessert and the contents of the glasses upstairs." Leaving the house, the detective headed for Nikki Freeman, who was still sitting on the steps. The woman looked shaken, her hands trembling slightly as she pressed a cup of tea brought by one of the neighbors to her lips. "Miss Freeman? I'm Detective Milka Shepard," she introduced herself, sitting down next to her. "I'm very sorry you had to go through such a traumatic experience. If you don't mind, I'd like to ask you a few questions." Nikia nodded, clutching the cup with both hands. "Tell me how you discovered the bodies." "I was getting ready for work as usual," Nikia began. "I'm a teacher at Laverne High School. I leave around 7:30, and I noticed that Jamal's car was still in the driveway, even though he's usually the first one out of the neighborhood. At first, I didn't think anything of it, but then I noticed that the blinds were still down, and there was no sound coming from the house." She took a sip of tea, gathering her thoughts. "I went over and rang the doorbell. No one answered. I knocked and called out, but there was silence. I thought maybe something had happened. Jamal had recently complained of back pain. Maybe he'd taken a turn for the worse. I called Layla's phone and heard it ringing inside the house, but no one answered. So I called the police. Did you know Rondo well? Well enough for neighbors. They moved here about 3 years ago. They were a nice couple, friendly, no problems. Jamal sometimes helped me with my car, and Layla looked after my son when I had parent-teacher conferences at school. Did you notice anything unusual lately? Maybe tension between the couple, strange visitors? Nakia thought for a moment. Not tension, but something had changed. They used to have barbecues in the backyard and invite the neighbors over. In the last year, they became more withdrawn. And... She hesitated. And? Shepard nudged her gently. They often had a friend over, Abigail. She owns a beauty salon downtown. Lila and she have been friends since college. But in the last few weeks, I've noticed something strange about her behavior. What kind of strange? Abigail has always been cheerful and lively. Recently, I saw her come over when Lila wasn't home. Jamal let her in and they talked for quite a while. When she left, she looked upset, almost like she was about to cry. And the next day, when she saw me, she pretended not to notice me, even though she usually always says hello. Shepard made a note in her notebook. Did Abigail often visit their house when Lila was away? Nakia shrugged. I can't say for sure. I work all day, but my neighbor across the street, Mrs. Johnson, said she saw her car there several times when Lila was at class. Do you have Abigail's contact information? No, but I have the number for her hair salon. I wanted to make an appointment for my son. Nakia dictated the number, and Shepard wrote it down. You mentioned that Lila was taking classes. Yes, she was attending night school at a medical college. She wanted to be a doctor. Did you hear or see anything last night? I saw Abigail arrive around 6 in the evening. She brought a container with her, probably dessert. She always brought something for dinner. She left around 9. I didn't notice anything else unusual. Shepard thanked Nakia and returned to her car. She contacted the station and requested the address of Abigail's beauty salon, as well as the full details of all 3 women, Jamala, Layla, and Abigail. 2 hours later, the detective was standing in the morgue watching Dr. Parker perform an autopsy. Preliminary tests had already confirmed the presence of brodifacoum, a powerful anticoagulant used in rat poison, in samples of the dessert and in the water glasses. A classic case of rodenticide poisoning, Parker commented, pointing to the damage to the internal organs. Brodifacoum prevents blood from clotting, leading to internal bleeding. Death occurs from massive blood loss and organ failure, a painful way to die. How much poison was in the dessert? Enough to guarantee death. Whoever did this knew what they were doing. The poison was evenly distributed throughout the dessert. What's this? Shepard pointed to strange spots on Jamal's arm. Kaposi's sarcoma, Parker replied, a characteristic symptom of HIV infection. Judging by the progression of symptoms, he had been infected for several years. What about his wife? Parker shook his head. She shows no signs of HIV infection. The test was negative. They probably practiced safe sex or she had natural resistance. It happens. Shepard nodded thoughtfully. The picture was starting to come together, but there were still many questions. The next stop was Abigail's Hair and Beauty, a beauty salon located on a busy street in downtown Laverne. To the detective's surprise, the salon was open despite the tragedy. Inside, several customers were waiting their turn, and a young woman sat behind the reception desk. Good afternoon, Shepard said, showing her badge. I'm Detective Milka Shepard. I need to speak with Abigail Mercer. The girl looked surprised. Miss Mercer isn't here today, she replied. She called this morning and said she wasn't feeling well and asked me to open the salon. Is it something serious? Possibly, Shepard replied evasively. Do you have her home address? The girl gave her the address, an apartment above the salon with a separate entrance at the back of the building. Shepard climbed the narrow staircase and knocked on the door. No one answered. She knocked again, louder. Miss Mercer, this is the police. Please open the door. Silence. The detective walked around the building, checking the windows. They were all closed. She returned to the salon. When was the last time you spoke to Miss Mercer? She asked the receptionist. Around 8 this morning. She sounded strange, like she had a cold or had been crying. Did she say where she was going? No, just that she wouldn't be coming in today. Shepard left her business card, asking to be contacted if Abigail showed up, and returned to the station. There, the requested information on all 3 participants in the drama was waiting for her. Jamal Rondo, 30 years old, owner of a small auto repair shop. Married to Layla Rondo, 28 years old. No criminal record, parking fines paid in full. The medical database revealed information about his HIV status and regular antiretroviral therapy at Dr. Morris's clinic. He was diagnosed about a year ago. Lila Rondo, née Benson, 28 years old, nurse at Dr. Carter's clinic, evening student at Laverne Medical College. Clean record, no offenses. Abigail Mercer, 26 years old, beauty salon owner. 1 speeding ticket 3 years ago, paid. Recently examined at the same clinic where Layla worked. Shepard tapped her pen thoughtfully on the table. Too many coincidences. She dialed the number for Dr. Carter's clinic. Good afternoon, this is Detective Milka Shepard from the Laverne Police Department. I'm investigating the deaths of Jamal and Lila Rondo. I need to speak with Dr. Carter. Yes, I'll hold. A few minutes later, she was connected to the doctor, and Shepard explained the situation. Dr. Carter, I need information about the medical records of Jamal Rondo, Layla Rondo, and Abigail Mercer. I understand that this is confidential information, but we have a double homicide, and a 3rd person may be in danger. After some hesitation, the doctor agreed to help. He confirmed that Jamal had been diagnosed with HIV about a year ago, and that his wife Lila had known about it from the beginning. Moreover, she worked at the same clinic and had access to his medical records. What about Abigail Mercer? Shepard asked. Miss Mercer, the doctor hesitated. I'm afraid I can't discuss the health of a living patient without a warrant. I understand, Shepard nodded, although the doctor couldn't see her. But may I ask when Miss Mercer was last at your clinic? That was the day before yesterday, the doctor replied after a pause. She came in for routine test results. And are those results related to her HIV status? The silence on the other end of the line spoke volumes. I see, Shepard said. Thank you for your help, doctor. She hung up and leaned back in her chair. Now the picture was becoming clearer. Abigail had probably found out about her HIV-positive status very recently. If she had been having an affair with Jamal, as her neighbor had confirmed, then she could have contracted the virus from him. And if she found out that both Jamal and Lila knew about his status and didn't warn her. The phone on the table rang, interrupting her thoughts. Detective Shepard here. Detective, this is the lab. We have the toxicology results for the Rondo case. We confirmed the presence of brodifacoum in the dessert samples and in the water glasses. But there's something interesting. There were 4 spots in the container where the cakes were, but the tests showed that only 3 cakes contained poison. The 4th was clean. 4 spots? Shepard asked. So there were 4 cakes there originally? Judging by the configuration of the container, yes. 3 with poison, 1 without. Thanks. Shepard hung up, her mind working at double speed. Abigail brought 4 cakes, 1 for each of the 3 dinner guests, and 1. Perhaps she had planned to take it with her, or eat it there, but changed her mind. 3 poisoned cakes, 2 for the Rondos, and 1, possibly for herself, to divert suspicion? But if so, why didn't she eat hers? Or did she eat it after all, and now she's lying dead in her apartment? Shepard dialed the clinic again. Dr. Carter, one more question. Lila Rondo, did she work at your clinic yesterday? Yes, until 3 o'clock, and then she had classes at the college. Did she have access to medical drugs? As a nurse, yes, although all potent drugs are kept under lock and key. What about anticoagulants? Warfarin, for example. Warfarin is prescribed, but it's kept in a regular cabinet. Technically, a nurse could have access to it. Thank you, doctor. The detective decided to return to Rondo's house, now with new information. In the bedroom where the bodies had been found, she carefully examined the bedside tables and wardrobes. In Lila's drawer, she found a diary and began to leaf through it. The entries were sparse, mostly about work and school, but a few notes caught the detective's attention. Jay met with E again. He thinks I don't know. I wonder if he told her. Probably not. He's too scared. I saw E flirting with him right in front of me today. How rude. Found out that E got tested. She'll know the truth soon. I wonder what she'll do. The last entry was dated the day before yesterday. E came to the clinic. She knows everything. I saw the look in her eyes. She hates me. But is it my fault? She slept with my husband. Shepard closed the diary. Now the motive was becoming clearer. Abigail had had an affair with Jamal, contracted HIV from him, and found out that both he and Lila knew about his status and hadn't warned her. The motive for revenge was more than convincing. There was one more important source of information left: Lila's co-workers. Shepard headed to Dr. Carter's clinic, where she spoke with several nurses who had worked with Lila. Lila was an excellent nurse, said one of them, Marcia Johnson. Always professional, punctual. The patients loved her. What about her personal life? Did she talk about her husband, her friends? Not really. You know, we're all pretty busy here, but she often mentioned her friend Abigail. They were close, like sisters. At least she used to be. What changed? I'm not sure. But in the last few months, Lila became distant when the subject of Abigail came up. Once I asked how she was doing, and Lila just changed the subject. Did Abigail come to the clinic the day before yesterday? Yes, confirmed Marcia. They were talking in the break room. I didn't hear what they were saying, but when Abigail left, she looked upset and angry. And Lila? Lila seemed, I don't know how to describe it, guilty, distraught. She left early that day, saying she wasn't feeling well. Shepard thanked the nurse and continued questioning other employees. No one had seen Lila take any medication from the cabinets, but one of the cleaners remembered that the clinic had recently been fumigated and that jars of rat poison had been left in the back rooms. Back at the station, Shepard drew up a diagram of the relationships between the three main figures in the case. Jamal, knowing his HIV status, had started a relationship with Abigail, his wife's best friend. Layla knew about this and probably knew about her husband's status from the beginning, but did not warn her friend. Abigail became infected, found out about it the day before yesterday, and probably immediately put two and two together. She may even have confronted Jamal and Layla before dinner. The evidence suggested that Abigail had brought the poisoned cakes to dinner, knowing that the couple would eat them. The fourth, unpoisoned cake was intended for her, but she may not have been able to bring herself to eat it with them, or did not want to risk it, despite the absence of poison. Now the main question was where Abigail was. Shepard contacted the patrol cars and ordered them to search the entire city for her car, a silver Nissan. She also requested a search warrant for Abigail's apartment and a check of her financial transactions over the past few days. By evening, a report came in from one of the patrol cars. Abigail's car had been found in the parking lot of the Laverna bus station. Shepard immediately drove there. The silver Nissan was parked in the far corner of the lot. The interior was empty, with no personal belongings or signs of a struggle. The detective approached a station employee and showed him a photo of Abigail. "Have you seen this woman today?" The cashier looked closely at the photo. "Yes, she bought a ticket this morning, for the bus to Los Angeles. I remember her because she looked very nervous." "What time did the bus leave?" "At 9:30. It should be in Los Angeles by now." Shepard thanked him and went outside. Abigail had run away, which only heightened the suspicion against her. It was easy to get lost in Los Angeles, and from there you could go anywhere, to another state, even to another country. She called the Los Angeles Police Department and passed on the information about Abigail, describing her as a suspect in a double murder. Then she returned to the station to file the necessary paperwork to put Abigail Mercer on the wanted list. While reviewing the case file before filing her report, Shepard analyzed the available facts once again. Jamal Rondo, knowing he was HIV positive, had entered into an intimate relationship with Abigail Mercer, his wife's best friend. Layla Rondo knew about her husband's status and may have suspected his infidelity, but she did not warn her friend about the danger. Abigail learned of her infection, and then that both Rondos knew about the risk and deliberately exposed her to danger. The motive was clear: revenge for betrayal on both sides. The murder weapon was rat poison in cakes. All the evidence pointed to Abigail as the killer, and her escape only confirmed this version of events. But some questions remained. Why didn't Lila divorce her husband, knowing about his infidelity? Why, as a nurse and knowing about the dangers of HIV infection, Didn't she warn her friend? Did she have her own motive for wanting to harm Abigail? Shepard put down her pen and rubbed her eyes. She needed to find Abigail Mercer to get some answers. For now, everything pointed to the murders of Jamal and Lila Rondo being an act of revenge by a woman they had both betrayed, each in their own way. On the third day of the investigation, Detective Milka Shepard obtained a search warrant for Abigail Mercer's beauty salon and apartment. A team of forensic investigators methodically searched every corner of the small but stylish salon in downtown Laverne while Shepard went up to the apartment above it. Abigail's home was tastefully decorated, with bright African prints complementing modern furniture, live plants, and framed photographs throughout. Shepard studied the photos closely, many of which showed Abigail and Lila together, at college graduation, at the beach, at the salon's opening. Smiling faces, young women embracing each other, nothing foreshadowed the tragedy that would cut short their friendship and their lives. "Detective!" one of the technicians called out to her as he emerged from the salon. "We found something." In the salon's back room, among cleaning supplies and hair care products, a bag of white powder was found, which preliminary tests identified as brotificum, the same rat poison that had been found in the cupcakes and the victims' bodies. "Where exactly did you find it?" Shepard asked, putting on gloves and examining the find. "In the far corner of the closet, behind boxes of disposable towels," the technician replied. "Looks like someone tried to hide it." Shepard nodded. Another piece of evidence against Abigail. She returned to the apartment and continued her search. In the bedroom, in a drawer of the bedside table, she found a folder with medical documents, the results of Abigail's recent tests, including a positive HIV test. The date on the documents confirmed the theory. Abigail had learned of her diagnosis 2 days before her murder. Next to the folder was an old phone, not a modern smartphone, but a simple push-button model, rarely used nowadays. Shepard turned it on. To her surprise, the phone was not password protected. There were only 2 names in the contact list, Jamal and Layla. The call log showed several calls to Jamal on the day before the murder. But the most interesting discovery was in the notes section. There was one entry dated the day before the murder. "He knew, she knew, both knew and kept quiet. He used me, knowing he could infect her. She let it happen even though she could have warned him." What irony. A nurse who didn't prevent the infection. Friends, love, all lies. They deserve to know what it's like when your life is destroyed by those you trusted. An eye for an eye. Sweet revenge. Shepard photographed the note and continued her search. In the bathroom, she found several packages of medication, including recently prescribed antiretroviral drugs. In the trash can was a crumpled prescription written by Dr. Carter. "Detective!" the technician called again. "There's something else in the kitchen." In the kitchen, in the trash can, they found empty packages of chocolate cake mix and a box from a container identical to the one in which the dessert had been found in Rondo's house. But most importantly, there was a food processor on the table with traces of chocolate batter, and a preliminary test showed that the same poison was present in the residue. "She made them here," Shepard stated, "and she didn't try very hard to hide the evidence." "Maybe she planned to clean up more thoroughly later," the technician suggested. "Or she didn't plan on coming back," the detective replied thoughtfully. After finishing the search, Shepard returned to the station and called a meeting with her team. They now had enough evidence to confidently name Abigail Mercer as the prime and only suspect in the double murder. "So what do we have?" Shepard asked the assembled detectives and officers. "Abigail Mercer, 26 years old, owner of a beauty salon, Lila Rondo's best friend since college. Recently learned that she was HIV positive from Jamal Rondo, with whom she had an affair. She found out that both Jamal and Lila knew about his status, but no one warned her. The motive is revenge for double betrayal. Rat poison identical to that found in the victims' bodies, and other evidence confirming her involvement in the crime were found in her salon and apartment." "Where is she now?" asked one of the officers. "She fled to Los Angeles the morning after the murder. The Los Angeles Police Department is looking for her, but so far without success. Any new witnesses?" "Yes," Shepard nodded. "We spoke to the employees at Jamal's auto repair shop. One of the mechanics, Kate Jackson, confirmed that she saw Abigail come to Jamal's the day before the murder. According to her, they were arguing. and Abigail looked very upset when she left. The detective continued analyzing the evidence when an officer entered the room with a piece of paper. "Detective Shepard, we just got a call from the San Diego bus station. A woman matching Abigail Mercer's description bought a ticket to Tijuana this morning." "Tijuana? Is she trying to cross the border?" Shepard shook her head. "Contact Border Control immediately, and send someone to the bus station in San Diego with her photo to check the camera footage." The next 2 days were filled with an intense search. The information was confirmed. Abigail had indeed bought a ticket to Tijuana, but it was unknown whether she had reached the Mexican border. Shepard personally went to San Diego to coordinate the search. On the 5th day of the investigation, a message came from the Border Patrol. A woman matching Abigail's description had been detained while attempting to cross the border with fake documents. Shepard immediately drove to the border crossing. Abigail Mercer was sitting in a small interrogation room. She looked exhausted and aged several years in those 5 days. Her usually well-groomed hair was carelessly pulled back into a bun, and dark circles had formed under her eyes. "Miss Mercer," Shepard sat down across from her. "I'm Detective Milka Shepard from the Laverne Police Department. I'm investigating the murders of Jamal and Layla Rondo." Abigail looked up but said nothing. "Do you know why you're being detained?" "Fake documents," Abigail replied quietly. "Not only that," Shepard shook her head. "You're suspected of double murder. We have a warrant for your arrest." Abigail lowered her eyes again. "I won't talk to you without a lawyer." "That's your right," Shepard agreed. "But before we finish, I want you to know that we have rat poison from your salon that is identical to what was found in Jamal and Layla's bodies. We have witnesses who saw you arguing with Jamal the day before the murders. And we have a recording on your phone where you actually admit to intending to get revenge on both of them." Abigail's face remained impassive, but her hands trembled slightly. "I want a lawyer," she repeated. Shepard nodded and stood up. "Of course. We're going back to Laverne. You'll be provided with a public defender there if you don't have one." In Laverne, Abigail was formally arrested and placed in a holding cell. She was assigned a public defender, Marcus Daniels, an experienced lawyer specializing in criminal cases. The first interrogation with her lawyer took place the next day. Abigail sat across from Shepard, Daniels sitting next to her, listening intently to every word. "Miss Mercer," Shepard began, "tell me where you were on the evening of May 7th, between 6 and 10 p.m. Abigail glanced at her lawyer, who nodded. "I was at Jamal and Layla Rondo's house," she replied. "We were having dinner." "Who else was present at this dinner?" "Just the 3 of us, me, Jamal, and Layla." "Did you bring anything with you?" "Dessert, chocolate cupcakes. I always bring dessert when I go to their house." "Who ate the cupcakes?" Abigail looked at her lawyer again, and he nodded again. "Jamal and Layla." "I wasn't hungry." "It's strange that you made 4 cakes instead of 3 if you weren't going to eat them," Shepard remarked. "I usually make 4. It's a habit." "I see. Tell me, how long have you known Layla and Jamal?" "Lila and I were friends from college, about 8 years. I've known Jamal since they started dating, about 6 years." "And when did your relationship with Jamal begin?" Abigail lowered her eyes. "About 7 months ago." "And Lila knew about that?" I'm not sure. We never discussed it. But you suspected she might know?" "Maybe. Laverne is a small town." Shepard took out the folder with Abigail's test results. "On April 25th, you had standard tests done at Dr. Carter's clinic. On May 5th, you were informed that the HIV test was positive. Is that correct?" Abigail clenched her hands into fists. "Yes." "And on the same day, you met with Jamal at his workshop. What did you talk about?" I asked him if he knew about his status." "And what did he say?" "He admitted that he had known for about a year." "And then you went to Layla's clinic. Why?" Abigail took a deep breath. "I wanted to know if she knew." "And what did you find out?" "She had known from the beginning, and she didn't warn me, even though she could see that Jamal and I were getting close." "That must have been a very painful discovery," Shepard said gently. "To find out that the 2 people closest to you betrayed you like that." Abigail didn't answer, but her eyes filled with tears. Miss Mercer, we found a recording on your phone dated the day before the murder where you basically described your plan to get back at Jamal and Layla. Rat poison identical to that found in the victims' bodies was found in your living room. Traces of poisoned cupcakes were found in your kitchen. All the evidence points to you poisoning Jamal and Layla. The lawyer put his hand on Abigail's shoulder, hinting that she shouldn't answer, but she shook her head. Yes, she said quietly. I poisoned them. Abigail, no! Daniels tried to stop her, but she continued. I want to tell the truth. Everything you said is true. I found out about my diagnosis and realized that I had been infected by Jamal. I went to him and demanded an explanation. He admitted that he knew about his status, but said he was taking medication and that the risk of transmission was minimal. As if that changed anything. He should have told me. He should have given me a choice. Abigail paused, wiping away tears. Then I went to Lila. We were best friends from college. I thought she would be as shocked as I was, but she already knew. She knew all this time and didn't warn me. She said it was my fault for sleeping with her husband. And you know what the worst part is? She said she hoped he got what he deserved. She used me to get back at him for cheating on her. And then you decided to get revenge on both of them, Shepard prompted. Yes, Abigail lowered her head. I bought rat poison at a hardware store on the other side of town. I made chocolate cupcakes, their favorite dessert, and put poison in 3 of them. I knew they wouldn't eat them all at once, maybe leave them for breakfast or a snack. The 4th cookie was for me, without poison. I thought I'd eat it so as not to arouse suspicion. But when the time came, I couldn't sit at the table with them and pretend everything was fine. What happened during dinner? Nothing special. We ate, talked about the weather, about work. I watched them eat the poisoned cakes, and part of me wanted to scream to stop them. But another part wanted them to feel just a fraction of the pain they had caused me. Did you realize they would die? Yes, Abigail replied quietly. I read about the effects of the poison on the internet. I knew it would be painful. Why didn't you eat your cake? I said I wasn't hungry. Actually, I felt sick at the thought of what I was about to do, what I was doing. And then I left. I drove home. I didn't sleep all night thinking about what I had done. In the morning, I heard on the news that they had been found dead, and I panicked. I gathered a few things, some money, and drove to the bus station. I wanted to get as far away as possible. Do you regret what you did? Shepard asked, watching Abigail closely. Abigail was silent for a long time, staring at her hands. I regret it, but not as much as I should, she finally said. I know murder is terrible, but part of me still feels like they deserved it. Jamal knew he could infect me, and he used me for his own pleasure anyway. Lila knew and let it happen, even though she could have warned me. They both betrayed me, each in their own way. But you betrayed Lila when you started a relationship with her husband, Shepard pointed out. Yes, Abigail admitted, and I'm to blame for that. I betrayed our friendship. But how can my mistake compare to what they did? They literally put my life in danger. Shepard closed the folder containing the documents. Miss Mercer, you are officially under arrest on charges of first-degree murder of Jamal and Lila Rondo. Everything you have said will be used against you in court. Abigail nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks. I understand. When she was led away, Shepard remained seated at the table, thinking over everything she had heard. The story was tragic in every sense. 3 people bound by friendship and love had become victims and perpetrators, each in their own way. Later, as she wrote her final report on the case, Shepard tried to objectively assess the role of each participant in the drama. Jamal Rondo, knowing he was HIV positive, entered into a relationship with Abigail without warning her of the risk. He betrayed his wife by cheating on her with her best friend, and he betrayed Abigail by putting her at risk of infection. Layla Rondo knew about her husband's status and his relationship with Abigail, but did not warn her friend. She may have used this situation as a form of silent revenge against her husband for his infidelity, allowing events to unfold as they did. Abigail Mercer betrayed her friendship by starting an affair with her friend's husband. But when she found out she was HIV positive and that both Rondos knew about the risk, Her sense of betrayal turned into a thirst for revenge that led to a double murder. There were no completely innocent victims or absolute villains in this story. Each character in this drama made choices that led to a tragic ending. Abigail Mercer's trial began 3 months later. Despite her candid confession, her lawyer insisted on reducing the charge to second-degree murder, arguing that she had been in a state of emotional turmoil and had not planned the crime in advance. The prosecutor, however, pointed out that the purchase of poison and the preparation of poisoned cakes clearly indicated intent. In addition, Abigail did not confess immediately, but tried to hide. The trial attracted media attention, especially after details of the relationships between the 3 main figures in the case became known. The story of a love triangle, betrayal, and HIV infection sparked heated debate in society. Some saw Abigail as a victim of circumstances, driven to despair by the betrayal of those close to her. Others considered her a cold-blooded killer who chose a particularly cruel method of revenge. Milka Shepard watched the trial with mixed feelings. As a detective, she had done her job. She found the killer and gathered enough evidence to secure a conviction. But as a human being, she couldn't help but feel sympathy for everyone involved in this tragedy. After a week of hearings and 2 days of deliberation, the jury returned its verdict. Abigail Mercer was found guilty of second-degree murder. The judge sentenced her to 15 years in prison with the possibility of parole after 10 years. As she left the courtroom, Shepard caught Abigail's eye. There was no anger or regret in her eyes, only endless fatigue and acceptance of her fate. The story of the Rondeau family and Abigail Mercer served as a reminder to the residents of Laverne of how easily lies and betrayal can destroy lives, and that sometimes the sweetest revenge leaves the most bitter taste. Returning home after the trial, Shepard thought about how there were no winners in this story, only victims. Victims of their passions, their selfishness, and their revenge. And perhaps the main victim was the truth itself, buried under layers of lies and half-truths that would now never be fully revealed.